And we're recording. Welcome, everybody. This is the Kubernetes SIG network meeting for Thursday, February 6th, 2020. Dan Winship has graciously offered to lead us in issue triage to start the meeting.
Is this working?
Looks good to me.
Okay. Ingress and egress tests for network policy. We are missing a test that uses both ingress and egress. So this just requires adding a little bit to the EDE test cases. It should be pretty simple. Anyone want to volunteer?
Well, we don't need to triage this, right? So, like, it sounds like, yes, there's a missing test. I mean, I guess I haven't confirmed that that test is missing. Maybe that's it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of triage, but you know, I guess if somebody wanted to get this assigned to them and work on it.
Sure, easy work to do, but it's like, yes, that's not the goal of triage. But if somebody wants it,
Oh, okay.
free PR.
Well, if anyone wants it, it's there. You can go find it. Trying to use Cilium after it was removed and Calico was installed instead. It sounds like CRI or something. So this is some sort of CRI, CNI issue.
Is it like stale files that have been left behind and Kubelet is trying to use them or something?
Yes.
Cool.
So probably not an issue and just a support thing.
Yeah, so should I change it to triage support?
Well, I mean, is it really a support request or is this a, yeah, don't leave files around? But I don't think, it doesn't look like the user did that on purpose. So I guess the question is, could we have done better?
Want to just ignore this and come back to it next time? It was filed today. Maybe somebody will jump on it. Sure.
Sure.
Support all CNIs on ARM64 platform. This does not seem sig-network. This is like...
If only there was somebody here who knew CNI's workflow.
Yeah, Dan Williams is out. And Casey's gone for months.
Isn't this really like an issue with each of the individual CNI plugins?
This seems... Okay, so this is a spin-off of a SIG testing thing. So why don't we... End-to-end tests for network policies. We have this. I think we're still not actually running the E2E tests on the standard the standard ED testing. Is Bowie there? I think you were looking at this a long time ago.
Bowie is not in the room.
I don't know if you bring up the cluster in E2E test. I think we skip network policy by default.
We do.
I don't think we bring up the cluster with network policy enabled to the provider.
But I mean,
the E2E test.
Is it meaningful to run EDE tests for the project against an arbitrary implementation?
Right.
When in reality, there's two parts of it. There's, if there's any API level defaulting and validation to do, I guess we could and probably should run those. But that doesn't mean that it's going to block traffic.
I mean, it doesn't look like the ask is for Kubernetes to run these tests. Looks like he's asking for like more clear definition of what each test confirms or denies.
Yeah.
Like if this test passes, what does that mean?
So the reason this discussion came up before is it turned out that someone had broken the EDE network policy tests, and then they stayed broken for like 5 months, and we never noticed.
Right.
And so we decided that, yeah, it probably would make sense to run them on GCP, even though it's not testing everybody, because then at least we're making sure that the tests work. But anyway, okay, so it sounds like this does not need, I mean, this is making progress. We don't need to do anything.
That's fair.
Kubeproxy can panic. Somebody already filed. Yeah, somebody filed the PR for this already. DNS policy and host network not working as expected. So this needs somebody to look at it.
Yeah, I was looking into this, Dan. I'm Antonio. So
Okay.
I will try to reproduce it, and you can assign to me.
Okay, this one is actually already not triage. I accidentally clicked on some that did not have triage unresolved. No issues with IPv6 only cluster. IPVS.
Oh, there's a PR that already exists. So
Right. Okay. Is Valerie there? Yeah, maybe we should get the bot to automatically remove the triage tag when somebody files a PR to fix something. That would be cool. Service IPs and ports are not released when deleting a service via a finalizer removing update. Okay. Sounds. What's Jordan saying? Service registry. So it sounds like this is triaged and just needs to be fixed.
Sounds like it.
What it looks like, yeah.
We should get Jordan to triage all our runs.
High load Kubernetes containers doesn't use etcresolve.conf file.
I have a hard time seeing how that has to do with load.
Yeah.
But if there's, well, somebody should try to triage.
So this seems to be Cordiana specific, right?
I don't think it's Cordiana specific. It sounds to me like their client is sending an undecorated query and they're surprised by that. You can stick this one on me.
Okay. Consider allowing DNS 1123 labels for service names. See something ancient, which it didn't even preload. Yeah, I guess this is.
You can assign this to me. I feel like I will have to close it.
Okay.
What Jordan said is pretty much right. Like changing it at this point is
Right.
very difficult for very little return. But I'll go look at why they want to.
Port forwarding does not work if app is bound to pod IP address. Do we?
Oh, this is port forward. No, this is not SIG. This is wrong. Wrong SIG.
Yeah.
Send it back to API machinery. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think so. Port forwards in the API server. So.
Is that right, or is there a hyphen in API machinery?
I think there's a hyphen. We'll find out.
Okay. Use service patch methods from cloud provider repo. This is already triaged anyway. Pod service endpoint unreachable from same host. It's maybe plugin specific. Wait, is it possible to use /32 pod cider?
What?
That seems like don't do that then. Oh, and oh, hey, this is, yeah. Do you want me to assign this to you, Lars? Or call it?
Yeah, I can take it.
I'm not
Well,
not sure I'm buying that statement though. Like it's supposed to work.
But I believe the local DNS resolver on the client side refuses the reply if it's not from the destination of the query.
But it should go through, it should go back through contract in reverse. So it should get retranslated back in.
Yeah, but it has a direct route since it's reachable directly from, so it's a case of asynchronous routing.
But it's on the same node. Like if it comes from, sorry, am I setting it up correctly? I've got two pods in the same node, one of which is a DNS server and one of which is a DNS client.
Yeah.
And the client issues a UDP packet, which goes to the root namespace, translates the service IP to the pod IP, writes a connection tracking record, responds, forwards it to the DNS server. The DNS server will respond to the pod's IP from the DNS server pod's IP. Connection tracking should reverse that lookup. It should say there's a record that matches this 5-tuple and rewrite it back to the service IP.
It doesn't seem to work because he also had a connection tracker printout in the issue, I believe, and it's unresolved entries. And I have tried this, and I get the reply back, but from the wrong source.
That's broken. Something's broken there. That's supposed to work. I remember testing that extensively.
Should we assign this one to you, Tim?
This should happen. This should happen all the time.
Yeah, it should happen all the time.
But I don't think usually the UDP applications are sensitive to asynchronous routing, but I believe that DNS resolver is.
Can you give it to me? I'll take it. Satya SM.
Who is that?
SATYASM. Satya SM. Satya.
Sorry, that's not to take it away from you, Lars, also, but it should work. Like we need to dig into it so you guys can talk and figure it out. That should absolutely work.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I can do it. I'll go in and assign myself. I think do that.
Thank you.
All right, and that's
Well,
15
thanks,
minutes.
buddy. Thanks.
You lost your screen.
Yeah, everyone.
Yeah,
Oh, is that-
we're done.
Oh, we're done. Okay.
Triage, I think. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
over the 15
We
minute mark.
usually do 15
Sorry.
minutes of that. We may have some more time towards the end because it looks like it's a pretty minimal agenda today. So keep it ready just in case. Next up, I think, was Laszlo. We talk about service definition, multiple protocols. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, it's about this enhancement proposal. I think so far all the comments are fixed in it, but please recheck. And I'm here to ask how to progress with this one.
I guess if all the concerns are addressed, it's a matter of getting back and rereading it to approve it. I think it's assigned to me as approver, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and now it will be most probably 1.19.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess the path is hassle me until I review it.
So that's all for myself, my side.
Great. Thanks, Laszlo.
Thank you.
Tim. And then Antonio, you want to talk about dual stack?
Yeah, well, mostly it's a heads up with the Clayton presented during the past sig-network meeting his pull request for the IP family. I see, Dan, that you were reviewing it, Tim reviewed it, and Rob Scott reviewed it. But I'm afraid that this can have more implication in another services. I don't know. Maybe Bowie with the service API. I'm really confused about this new field, and I would love if more of you put your eyes on the pull request. What I did is, because the pull request is too confusing, I created two different pull requests to the KEP to address some small things. One is the headless service with selectors and IP family to see if we need to modify the endpoints controller to return multiple endpoints per pod. And the other is with some to restrict the dual stack validation, because I know that the goal was to have multiple service siders with a comma separated list, but if this feature is too confusing, and I think that keeping things too open can lead to corner cases and scenarios that we don't know what's going to happen.
So I spent a couple of hours this week trying to really ingest what was going on with that. And at the end of it, I felt like I didn't understand what the real problem was. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but like I went through all the defaulting code, and it's really twisty stuff, because it actually does try to handle cases like external name and other things. At the end of it, I wasn't sure why there's 200 replies to that issue, or whatever, in that order, when it really felt like what was missing was the ability to clear the IP family flag on external name when you were setting external name. That was, I don't know, Tuesday or something. I've got to go back to it and understand it. But like, is there more enlightenment that you can share with me? Do you understand it?
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm gonna say I don't understand everything either, but so one issue is that, yeah, you kind of want to clear IP family in some cases, except that it's documented as being immutable. So theoretically we can't. And so that was one thing. The other one is it was unclear if we had intended for headless services to be able to be dual stack or not.
So my read was we had intended for them not to be dual stack. Rather, headless service was subject to the IP family. So it was single stack, even if it was headless. I don't know if that's a right decision or a wrong decision. We can go back and revisit that. but the IP family mutability perhaps should be the same as cluster IP, which is you can mutate it, but only when you're changing type to or from a type that does or doesn't use cluster IP, right? So I can change from cluster IP to external name and clear the cluster IP field, but if I change from cluster IP to node port, I can't change it, right? So maybe we should make IP family available on those same edges.
Sorry.
And then we could discuss whether headless should be dual family. It seems reasonable, but I don't know what will break if we try to populate endpoints with double families now. Cal,
Sorry, I dropped. What? I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, I will take it back to the issue, but mostly I don't understand why it's such a huge deal, except that Jordan and Clayton said something about the difficulty of taking the value from the server config when you're in the middle of an update of HA masters, where you might get different values. And I didn't quite catch what was broken there.
But there are different things. So I'm in deep waters with Jordan comments and all the API thing. He mentioned something about the SKU masters and what should he and Clayton were back and forth. I think Dan has a better insights on that. But the other is the problem with the meaning of what IP family is. When you go to the headless services, that is about DNS, so you can have an inconsistency. For example, a service that has IP family IPv6 and you have all the endpoints IPv4. Then when you go to external name, you can have the IP family to whatever IP family. And I mean, I think that for me, the main issue is that as a user of that field, I don't have clear what's the meaning.
Sure, so we can fix that. Clearing IP family for external name seems completely reasonable. Like, commit that. That seems like a very reasonable thing to do. Making a clearer documentation statement that IP family defines the selection of which endpoints to use, even in a headless service, also seems reasonable.
So we wouldn't be able to validate that the endpoints were correct, but we could have kubeproxy ignore the incorrect endpoints.
Correct. Or we could make it select both families of endpoints, but that feels more likely to break to me.
Well, and you can't do a dual stack service with anything other than headless. So,
right.
Well, except external DNS, I guess. But so yeah, I don't see why headless services ought to be able to be dual stack. But
I believe that's what Cal was thinking when he did that. But there's clearly something else going on there that I'm not quite understanding.
I think only Clayton and Jordan understand anything beyond what Antonio and I just said.
All right, we'll go back to the PR, and there's actually like 8 PRs open right now on IPv6. There's some against the KEP, some for validation. So I'll try to take a look at those.
The ones that I sent are minor things, is to fix the validation and to clarify all these things with what we want to do with the headless services. Just, small things to note, but the big chunk is this Clayton Jordan thing that I don't know, all this defaulting, this transition of services and SKU. I don't know exactly what they want to do.
Okay. All right. If we have extra time at the end of this meeting, we can go do that.
Well, with that said, we are at the end of the agenda.
Nice.
So we can choose. I don't know if there are any other last bits of conversation people wanted to have, or if we want to call it early, or we can do a bit more issue treatment.
Just a heads up, maybe I should add to the talk. I opened the PR about a week or so back as a first step for the whole node local CIDR changes. What I did was refactored the whole code to allow us to introduce newer models without actually changing anything in the existing one, right? So it's a full refactor where if you run kubeproxy with the current options, the same behavior is there, but it's going through this full infrastructure. And then tomorrow we can add other modes and implementations of it. So if people can take a look, that would be awesome. After this, because this itself has become a large change, then after this, the other changes will be much more focused to say adding this more, adding this more.
Quite frankly, you're in my queue behind all of the SIG stuff.
Satya, if you haven't already, could you put the link to that in the meeting notes? Thank you. So what do we think? There's a bunch more issues we could triage, or we could spend the time looking at KEPs individually.
I've already loaded this PR.
We could watch Tim do
I
a
mean,
PR.
I'm not going to do it like as performance art, but and in fact, nobody has responded to my question, so maybe I'll just see if I can raise Clayton on Slack or Jordan.
Okay, so why don't we end early today then?
I mean, don't let me, like, you guys are free to triage issues too. Like, if you want to, I'm going to pay attention to this for, well, I've got a half hour.
Sounds good. Dan and Chip, would you want to stay on and do some more, or you've got them open?
Yeah, I can. I still have the rest of them. So this is probably more Windows than us anyway, and doesn't really need triage because it's just failing test. Search discovery, namespaces. I mean, there's a KEP to get rid of service discovery by environment variables now, right?
Yeah, and I think, what's the latest discussion on this?
What is this issue?
Service discovery via environment variables should be available for all namespaces. I mean, this seems really well fixed.
Close will not fix. Please use DNS.
He's saying DNS does not solve the issue, referring to ports discovery, blah, blah, blah.
Please use SRV DNS.
All right. Okay.
I mean, the reality is, like, it's already a scalability problem.
Right. Oh, yeah. No. I totally, but yeah. So do you want me to assign it to you, or I can fill that in after?
If you want me to be the bad guy, I'll be the bad guy.
No, I can do that. I'll just get to it after the meeting. Okay. Network policy not working with SADP protocol. This is probably a plugin specific thing. Calico.
Feel free to send it my way.
Okay. By service IP is 2 or 3 times slower than by pod IP. Since service is backed by 2 pods, it should have a better response time.
What's the order of magnitude here? Like, are we talking about a microsecond difference, or are we talking about
500 microseconds versus 2 to 3 seconds?
Milliseconds?
500 milliseconds versus 2 to 3 seconds. So it's 4 to 6 times slower. Network plugin flannel host gateway. Host gateway? That means it's directly, it's not even going through a SDN. Anyway, this is probably...
Is that a single packet? I don't know what this note, clearly it's not. What is that?
AB minus A16 minus A2000. I just looked at it.
I don't know what AB does. So.
Oh, okay.
It
So
depends.
yeah, probably sending 16 packets of 2,000 bytes or something like that.
No, 2000 requests, I think 16 concurrent connections if I read it right.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Who wants to triage this? I got Jordan.
Did somebody say they would take it?
Anybody?
Send it to me. I can take this one.
Okay, who is that?
That's Rikatz, R-I-K-A-T-Z. Yeah.
Qproxy 115.6 cannot delete the NAT entries of IPv6, but why can kubectl delete pod be deleted? Okay, this sounds like just Qproxy is failing to delete entries with IPv6. Although it's 115, how much?
I remember this. I don't know why. Go down.
Oh yeah, yep. You commented.
Yeah. No, but because there was a bug and.
Okay, so
I'm waiting for
a response for.
Yeah. Well, you can assign to me.
Okay.
And ping the guy.
Who owns images? That SIG release? I assume. I think this is.
This is the one you were important. Is the guys that had this architecture S390X.
I'll assign this to me. How to change pod slider on specific Kubernetes. This seems like support.
I think you could give this one to me too.
Okay.
I mean, we've answered this before too. The general answer is you don't change pod cider.
Yeah.
Server's not noticing if ELB is deleted manually. Don't do that then?
No, actually, I think there's another really old bug on this, which is the service controller only does one directional reconciliation. It doesn't periodically query the cloud provider to see which load balancers exist and then recreate them if they need to be.
Right.
Because that was deemed very, very expensive to do at the cloud provider. So perhaps that's a bad answer.
Is this sig-network? It looks like SIG AWS is all over this anyway.
I mean, it is sig-network in that it's the service controller.
Okay. So what do we do with it?
I can take it. Andrew.
Who is that?
Andrew second.
No route to host watched after one node reboot in cluster. Yeah. So I think that, yeah, this is support, and we can just remove triage unresolved, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we generally try to close support. Like triage support should not exist.
Okay.
GitHub is not a support mechanism.
Right. So what do we?
We can try to figure out if there's an actual bug here, and if not, then we should send them to Stack Overflow or something.
This is a pretty old
112.
Kubernetes version. Yeah.
And the only time I've ever seen this happen is when the kube proxy on my local machine is dead, and I'm trying to send requests to a pod that doesn't exist anymore. So the packet actually makes it all the way to the destination node. The destination node says, sorry, no route to host, and ICMPs it back.
But I think whoever said this is very old is correct. I mean, we don't support this at all, do we?
Do we know what CNI or stuff they use?
Calico. Yeah.
It could also be that the mesh doesn't see the new, it got a new IP and didn't update the mesh. So it doesn't know where to send the resort IP to.
Does that sound like someone's volunteering to be assigned?
I mean, truthfully, you can close this as reproduce it on something released in the last year and a half, or this is almost certainly a kube proxy stale routing issue. Like make sure your kube proxy is up and running. And GitHub is not a support mechanism. Like, this doesn't appear to be a real bug unless you can confirm it against, say, 16. Thanks,
Asking
everybody
on,
here needs to sharpen their swords.
on where did you say?
Oh, you're actually gonna respond? I thought Sanchez can do it. I'd say like if they can reproduce it on 16, then we would take a look at it. But you know, in terms of being helpful, like please make sure your kube proxies are running. That's when I've typically seen this in the past. When we used to see it was when kube proxy would get evicted. Remember that one? And I was laughing. Yep. Remember that one? What do you mean it got evicted? How did kube proxy get evicted?
All right. IP tables blocks connections to external traffic policy cluster. I don't know what Kong even is. Anyone? Anyone?
Give it to me. Oh, it maxes me out.
How to properly deploy persistent connection server. It seems like a support request.
Yes.
Yeah, you can assign it to me. This is Minan at Freehan at REEHAN. Yes, thank you.
Failed to deploy dual stack kube proxy crush. Back off. Panic. Service add.
This is the one. Lars, no. This is one that the endpoints are not validated or something, and kubeproxy crash.
Okay, well, this definitely seems triaged. And people are looking at it, so I think.
Carl commented on it.
Sorry, what was that?
Carl commented on it, and Lars. They say that's an invalid configuration or something like that.
Well, anyway, so it's being looked at. API gateway integration with Ingress controller. This seems like support. We need like a cut and pasty thing for support.
I used to have one. But then the number of support issues died down dramatically in the first couple of years. Also, doesn't this seem like SIG AWS, not SIG network?
Yes, although, and it looks like
someone tried to close it.
It looks like, yeah, the reporter tried to close it and failed. Azure incoming connections seen with clusters outbound IP address. Do we have any Azure people?
Yeah, you can assign it to me. ARAMASC. Yeah.
How do I modify the health check interval?
AWS specific, right? Yeah.
We should reassign this to AWS. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
What is it? Area cloud provider AWS? No.
I think it may already have AWS on it. It definitely has cloud provider.
Head cloud provider.
Oh,
all right. I'll figure this out after the meeting. Flannelpod on node stuck at init01. That seems like a flannel bug. All right, this seems like assigned to recats since you're already talking to them.
Yeah. Forgot to do that. Thank you.
Session affinity config did not take effect. That looks like session affinity is, well, I guess they're saying that the timeout seconds is not doing anything. I feel like we have CI that verifies that. I can look at this. IP family IPv6 is set, but the IP is still IPv4.
Assign to me.
Okay.
Ask. Or ask them.
He doesn't even show any IPv4 or IPv6 address here, so it's really not clear what's. Okay, this guy is filing a bunch of bugs. Already set hostname override, but node port service cannot access with set external traffic policy. Service cannot be accessed via node port.
I was dealing this one, but I couldn't figure out what was happening because he said that he got a pretty small node and this didn't work. I couldn't reproduce that, so I have just an assignment me, and if someone wants to pick it up and see what about these small nodes, I think that's a performance issue of his environment. But if anyone got another idea.
Is by any chance localhost resolving to a v6 address?
I was wondering that too.
::1.
I think it also mentions trying this on the master, but master usually doesn't have Q proxy, right? Am I right?
Yeah, the thing is that I've reproduced it like the same environment of his because it was like Ubuntu 18 with kubeadm and couldn't reproduce that. So I don't know if I am missing something.
The kernel say Docker Swarm, so maybe that's weird.
Or no, that's a host name, isn't it?
Ah, okay.
Sounds like nobody wants to touch this. Leave it unresolved for now.
I will try to think another time about this one else and see if I can figure out something else.
Yeah, one thing we were getting an answer to is does curl 127.001:32584 work instead of using the localhost name, right?
I think probably that's.
The thing is that he says that he can reach by the node port, but not by the local host in the same node. But I could do that. I could do that. So I don't think this is a problem. And then he says that he got a node with a pretty small size with 2 GB or 1 GB or something like that. And I don't know if this is yeah.
The machine IP node port, it says, is working, right? We should try 127.001 node port. If that is also working, then the highest likelihood is localhost is probably resolving to a v6::1 address.
Windows containers can't communicate with resources from host network. Yeah.
Looks like SIG Windows has already claimed this one and put it into a project.
Worker node fails always in not ready state. This looks like a kubeadm problem of some sort, probably. What is kubeadm in terms of SIGs?
It's cluster.
Is it? It's cluster lifecycle?
Yes.
Flaky test. This has assignees. Wait a minute. I thought I already deflaked this test. Connection refused during rolling upgrade of deployment. I expected the rolling update to make sure that requests inside the cluster get drained properly and redirected to the newly created pods, thus not creating a momentary situation in which the service does not accept connections. Do we actually do that?
That's what graceful termination is for.
But doesn't that need at least 2 backends? This seems to apply there's only a single backend, right? A single pod.
Replicas 4.
Sorry.
So he needs to use graceful termination?
I mean, the short answer is this is what graceful termination is supposed to do.
Well, it looks like he doesn't have that, or is that
well, there's
on
a
by
default.
default?
Yeah, there's a default of 30 seconds. So what's likely happening is he's receiving that SIG term and closing his listening socket, which, while it seems like you should do that, you shouldn't do that. This has been a repeated issue over and over again.
I don't think this is a persistent connection thing though. It's just drying curl.
Yeah, it's not about persistent connection.
Okay.
What happens is basically everything's asynchronous, right? So somebody says, go delete this pod. Kubelet says, oh, this pod's being deleted. I've got 30 seconds, but it sends a SIG term now. The pod says, oh, I'm going to receive SIG term and either exit or close my socket.
Right.
Right? Meanwhile, that pod's not gone, so the new pod might not be up yet because everything's happening asynchronously.
Right.
So the scheduler is busy thinking about which node am I going to put this new pod on, and connections are not being received through the service because there's no endpoints available.
Right.
But
so is this documented somewhere?
It is extensively. There's been blog posts and articles, and I've seen it over and over again. But if he has 4 replicas,
well, but some percentage of connections will get routed to the wrong one. Well, no, it should remove that endpoint before it kills the.
Well, no matter what, there's a race, right? That pod will go unready, and that has to propagate up to the API server, which Kubelet does not do instantaneously.
Right.
And then that has to propagate back down to other kube proxies to remove it from the endpoint set. So there's still a race where if you immediately on SIG term close your socket, you will get some bad requests sent to you.
So one way we kind of hacked something together was to add a pre-stop hook, and then get it to get the health checks to start failing, but don't kill, right? So if you sleep 30 there, that'll give you this behavior.
Right.
But you kind of have to write it as a pre-stop.
So I mean, there's an open question about whether we can systematically solve this. I think in this case, the real answer is, is your app closing its socket on SIG term? Please don't.
But if they have no control over it?
Wrap their app in a shell script that captures SIG term,
and
or throw a pre-exec or a pre-stop hook.
Anybody want to explain that?
You can assign it to me, and I'll do it. I'll find the other references too, because I've explained this at least a dozen times.
Okay, and I think that pretty much gets us.
That brings us to the end, yeah.
So I'll give you a quick, oh, wait 1 minute. One quick update. I was talking to Jordan through this. It sounds like the real issue is around, for IPv6, is around clients who don't preserve fields they don't understand. So if I have a backrev client with IP family who tries to change something to external name, it will fail because it detects IP family as being unset when you're not allowed to unset it, but it shouldn't need to be set in the first place because that's just weird. So I'm going to summarize on Clayton's PR and then figure out whether his PR is actually the right fix or not. Damn backrev clients. Compatibility is hard. Let's go shopping.
Cool.
One day, Jordan will write a book on all the ways we screwed up compatibility. It'll be wonderful.
Good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. See you.
Oh, the topic for next week, the KubeCon SIG presentation, right? We've got 7 weeks to prepare it.
Yep. I will add it
Thank
to the
you.
list.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.